Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. He is a wealth of support, information, and knowledge for parents, but also those looking to seek out his career field. I'm talking about a school psychologist. This is Good Advice Helps with Dr. Allan Gold, and he's back with us, our Man of the Year, with more insight as we take your emails. So great to have him back. And Allan, how are you doing today?
Okay, thank you. It's nice and warm here, or it's nice and sunny here in San Francisco. So that's good.
I'm always intrigued about the weather there. And I just had a conversation with somebody the other day that said, and I was there 2 years ago, February, and just, it was a seminar I was going to. Of course, I had to, look at Alcatraz. I didn't go there, but I looked at it from a distance. Yeah. And it was like that when I was there. It was kind of misty and rainy. But people tell me all the time, Alcatraz is usually the cloud around it. And my friend went in early summer, and they just talked about this the other day, and said that they were told, you need a sweatshirt or something before you go. Is it kind of like that year round where it's, could be a little changeable there?
Because it's right in the middle of the bay, and often the bay draws in the fog from the ocean. And so it's sometimes, sometimes it's nice and sunny, but and particularly during the summer when the interior of California gets hot, that really draws in all of the fog from the coast. So San Francisco and the coast tends to be more foggy during the summer, actually.
It's kind of funny with Alcatraz being there. It just almost adds to the omnipresence of it with that fog and a misty kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And just even that that dock setting and that whole town right there, just so much fun. Even it was raining. I'm walking through the streets. Oh, let's go here. Let's go there. Like a kid in an amusement park.
It's a great place. It's a great city.
How far away are you from that section right there?
Probably 20 minutes drive.
Oh, interesting.
Nothing's terribly far. So I'm more in the central part of the city.
Gotcha. So we have a lot of feedback since the last time we got together. You can always reach us at instantfeedback.steve@gmail.com. And this is Robert in Plano, Texas, who says, what are some early warning signs that a child or teen might be experiencing depression? And if a teacher or parent raises concern, what does the school psychologist's response process typically look like?
Okay, excellent question. One needs to look for signs both at home and at school. So if a child is isolated, if a child cries easily, if a child seems, just the facial expression is one of sadness, it's probably better to not to ignore it. Kids go through phases and they may have a bad day or something like that. So it's important to look at, if you see that for a week or more, and it depends on what the kid says too. If a kid says, I'm really lonely, then, you have to pay attention to that. But as kids get older, they try to mask their feelings. So that's not particularly helpful to the adults. But they're also not that good at hiding things. If a child seems not to have any friends, is alone during recess, stays home, doesn't want to have a play date or hang out with anybody else, chances are there is some depression there. If the child expresses a lot of worry, oh, I'm so scared about this test coming up and that kind of thing. If it's an academic concern. Yes, I think parents should pay attention to it. If it can also be they're very angry because not all depression, it's usually a feeling towards oneself, but sometimes it will result in explosions and that kind of thing. It doesn't mean that everybody angry is depressed, but it can also be a sign that something's going on with that kid. So I think it's absolutely important that the teachers and parents talk, and they confirm that the teacher's seeing the same thing. Johnny seems so sad and isolated. He doesn't talk to anybody. It takes him a long time to get started on his work. Um, that Yes, then it's important that the teacher and parent confirm that what they're seeing at school is what they're seeing at home and vice versa, and then contact the school psychologist. Um, I certainly had experience with kids who were depressed, and I think if the school psychologist can form a trusting and healthy relationship with the student, and then really try to figure out what's going on. It seems like you're really sad. Can you explain to me what is making you sad? And kids are not always willing to share, so it can be a challenge for anybody. I mean, any professional. But if you get a clue about what's going on, um, I think what's important is that, well, and you particularly want to find out if the child has any suicidal ideation. I mean, that's critical.
Mm.
For example, at our middle school, we used to do, well, still do, an SOS, Signs of Suicide program for all seventh graders, and it would be a period-long discussion in their PE classes, and then we would give them a little questionnaire to fill out, and we would talk to those kids who would indicate three or four feelings that suggested that they were depressed. And so we would meet with them and try to figure out what was going on. Um, if there is suicidal ideation, then that child needs to go to a therapist outside of school, and the parents need to do that. But not all depressed kids, are suicidal.
Sure.
For some, the kids can take antidepressants, but there's research that shows that sometimes antidepressants can actually increase the suicidal ideation.
I
So.
mean, that's one of the top things that they tell you, whether it's a child or an adult.
Yeah. So if a child seems to be suicidal, they should not be left alone. Um, and if they need to be hospitalized briefly, the 5150, hospitalizing somebody for 3 days, then they should do that. I mean, fortunately, I didn't have to deal with so many kids that depressed. But you want to find out, are they depressed because their social relationships are falling apart,
Sure.
or their academics are too hard for them, or people are bullying them and being mean to them. Those are much more common causes of depression. It may be something at the home. Maybe the parents are fighting all the time, and maybe they're on the verge of divorce. Maybe there's a relative or a pet that's very sick, um, and they're worried about the human or the pet passing away. So there are many reasons that can cause depression. Um, but I think the fact that there is a school psychologist on campus to work with this kid and to find out um, what interventions can be done. For example, if the kid has no friends, we talk about, okay, what do you think, who do you really kind of like? And then the school psychologist can bring two people together. It may take only one person. If a kid's really isolated, it may take only one person to help make that child feel better. So,
You know what, Alan, I want to ask you, before we even go to the next question,
yeah,
outside of thoughts of suicide, let's put that over to the side for a moment. have you, and you deal with so many different dynamics when it comes to kids over many, many years. You probably have seen pretty much everything. Have there been times where you're at the point where you say, I can't do anything more here? Again, the suicide over to the side.
Yeah.
Where it's like you've worked with the child, you've expressed empathy, everything. And have you gotten to that point where it's like, you know what, parent, I can't do anything more. You need to take it to a level of a psychologist and regular therapy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Sometimes that happens. It's frustrating, obviously. You're trying everything. You're trying to figure out, how do I communicate with this kid? Or you can communicate, but they don't change. And you feel frustrated. It's like any profession. I mean, look at medical doctors. Sometimes they can't do something with a medical condition, and it's and you need to try somebody else.
To your point, I want to share this. So this was, I want to say, 6, 7, 8, probably 8 years ago, and primary care physicians can prescribe medication. And a friend of mine said that they went to their primary and they're having a little trouble with their son. Just nothing crazy or anything. Just he was kind of bummed out and maybe hormones kicking in and things like that. And the doctor gave a med and it was really not making a difference. And parent-child went back to the doctor and the doctor said, I'm tapping out. Can't help you anymore. I appreciate the honesty, but on the flip side of that, should these primary care doctors be prescribing meds? Let's talk. We'll talk about kids and teens here. Should they be prescribing meds? And the reason I'm asking that is, I'm not the expert, but I look at this in a broad view. Do they really have the time, like a therapist or psychiatrist, to hear the child out, hear their story, hear everything? Typically, it's 11 minutes at the average doctor. You're in there, you're out of there. That's the high and the goodbye. Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I agree with you. I think they really do need to listen. I mean, a perfect example is kids who are referred to physicians for ADHD diagnosis.
Great example.
And often it happens that, in 10 minutes, let's medicate the kid. Whereas at school, we spend a lot of time administering questionnaires to parents, teachers, the student, if they're old enough to do a questionnaire. I used to do computer evaluations where they actually need to pay attention to do the assessment. So it's much more time. It's at least an hour, and of course at school you have all the observations of how the kid is functioning on a daily basis.
Sure.
So I absolutely agree that medical doctors ought to take more time and actually take the time to discuss the child's situation with people who are much better observers or have much more frequent observation opportunities.
And I'm not throwing any doctors under the bus or anything like that, but, insurance situations, they got to get to a minimum of 4 patients an hour. And again, the average is about 11 minutes with the high and the goodbye, and doctor goes from one room to another, filling out something in that. Instant feedback, steve@gmail.com finds Stephanie in Denver. She says, there's a lot of conversation now about student mental health than there was over a decade ago. How has the role of the school psychologist evolved in recent years, and where do you see it heading in the future?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, over 50 years, I've seen quite a change. One thing that's critical is that I think seeking mental health is much less stigmatizing now than it used to be.
For everybody. Yeah.
For everybody, not just for kids, for adults as well. when 50 years ago, people didn't want to admit that they needed to see a therapist, and it was even worse many years before that.
Oh my God. Do you remember back then where if you even use those two words, mental health, even if
Yeah,
you said, I'm taking care of my mental health, you were looked at like, oh, somebody has a
a real
problem.
sicko,
Yeah. And it was kind of a joke when people would say, yeah, I'm taking off tomorrow. It's going to be a mental
Mental
health
health
day,
day.
where it
Yes.
was almost like a tongue in cheek kind of thing, whether somebody was intentional about that or not, or they just wanted a day off. Now it's common practice. Like, I need a day
I
off.
need a day off. I need a
Yeah.
mental health day.
Yeah.
So it's much more accepted now. And of course, different cultures have different approaches to that. Different schools, maybe the school psychologist in a particular school only does assessments and doesn't do the counseling. But there may be counselors at the school that kids can see. So I think what's critical, even though the stigmatization of it has lessened, there are still people, depending on the culture or depending on the child's, own personality and, you know, um, feels easily embarrassed and that kind of thing, they won't get the help that they need. So that's why it's so critically important for school psychologists to build trusting relationships, not to just be in their office all the time, but to go into classrooms, to go out to recess, well, like I did, to do cameo appearances in school plays, just to
Mm.
show that you're a real human being and you've
Yeah.
got you can be fun, you can have emotions so that it's not embarrassing for kids to go see the school psychologist and
Sure, like you're user friendly. And I remember when my kids were younger, and you'd be at a restaurant, and anybody from the school, psychologist, guidance counselor, teacher walks in. It's almost like, oh, there's Mr. Look, he's over there. It's like it was like a celebrity showed up.
yes,
Now,
yes,
and so I totally get what you're saying, where you embrace a cameo in a play. It just makes you like one of them, and it just
yeah,
feels good.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that answers that question, but I think the where is it going in the future? Well, one thing that's absolutely a necessity is more mental health services available in schools.
Yes.
Kids need it now more than they ever did before. And with everything going on in the country with school shootings and all that kind of thing that are so horrible, um, kids are going to be more afraid, whether they're depressed or scared.
Yeah.
They need somebody to be able to talk to this about. And I think that, frankly, I think federal funding and state funding should go to having a school psychologist in every school. And the National Association of School Psychologists has a ratio of one psychologist to 500 students. I think it should even be, a lower ratio, maybe 1 to 300 students. So,
I completely agree with you. And my kids are teens. One is still in school, high school age. One
yeah,
one left 2 years ago. Um, I thought it was common practice that schools had school psychologists, or is it more of this person is the district psychologist and they bounce around? So that's my first question. Second is just a point. In the school that mine go to, they hired a drug counselor for
hmm
intervention. That's that person's only job. They have experience in that because of the drug. And I'm in a, it's a good district, but it's prevalent everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are.
yeah. No, I think that makes sense. It doesn't really matter who the helper is. I mean, there are people who are experts in behavioral interventions, so they know how to observe a child, they know how to set up rewards and consequences, um, and which may be not every school psychologist is a total expert in that.
Sure.
So, that that's very helpful. Just like you said with the drug counselor, um, but to have that available, whether it's a counselor, social worker, school psychologist. There just need to be people available for kids for whatever they need to do.
Sure. All right, let's another question here. This is from James in Columbus and says, I appreciate your conversation. When a child is having repeated behavior issues in the classroom, what role does a school psychologist typically play? And how can parents best collaborate with you without feeling like they're being blamed or judged?
Oh,
Mm.
well, that's a good question.
All right.
Um, so if there are continual behavioral problems, it may be due to ADHD and lack of control. It may be kid who just wants attention from other kids. Again, like with every problem, the job for the school psychologist is try to deconstruct the problem and try to figure out what's really going on in this kid's head. And with behavioral interventions, you really do need to figure out what are the triggers for that child's behavior. And so a lot of observation is um, necessary,
Mm.
being in the classroom. Um, and certainly for the parents to, the parents always have to take that risk. Am I going to be judged as being a bad parent? But if they want to help the kid, they have to, and that again, it's why it's so important for the school psychologist to build a common trusting relationship, not to be judging the parents. You know, Certainly one can discuss what the parents can do differently. I would want to know, okay, when your child misbehaves at home, how do you handle it? And then we could work together to figure out, well, what's another way to do that? For example, for kids with behavior problems, I would set up contracts with
Mm.
the teacher, find out what's rewarding to the kid and set up one or two or three behaviors
Mm.
that the teacher could evaluate. And I would often extend that to at home um, and see how that works. That was one way that would help me determine, is this ADHD or something else? Because kids with ADHD may just not be able to, keep quiet or not sit in their desk or not raise their hands when they want to say something. Um, and they really do want to be rewarded, earn their rewards, but they can't control themselves. So that's an indication of ADHD. But if there are times when they can control themselves, and then, like I said earlier, you want to find out what's the trigger for this behavior. Does the teacher look at them in a different way, or is a kid saying something to them?
Mm.
Or are they dragging stuff from home that what's going on at home that
Sure.
they're holding in at home because they can't express it. And, they're angry. Their older siblings have beaten them up or made fun of them. And, there's so many reasons, I mean, it sounds like I'm babbling on here, but there's so many reasons that cause behavioral problems. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's impulsivity and lack of control, but sometimes it's an emotional reason. But how do you work with the parents? Again, you need to work with, like, say, we are a team. We want to work together to try to correct this behavior, and say, are you willing to share how you handle things? And you can even expressly say, I'm not judging this. We'll look at what's going on at home and what's going on at school and see how things are handled. Because it's very true that when teachers will often do some kind of intervention behavior and it only makes things worse or it doesn't improve it. So they do more of it, and that's not a good solution. You want to try something novel and different and see if something else works.
I can't imagine somebody in your role. You have to get to the root cause.
Yeah.
And in a short period of time, you have to ask all the right questions to get as deep as you can with a student that may not be freely expressing themselves, or maybe they're scared. You have to gain that trust, get that information, and come up with a plan. And a psychologist or a child psychologist is one thing, but in the school setting, you're not meeting, once a week for an hour. You got to be on point. Like, I give you a lot of credit there, a lot.
No, it's true. And, like you said, sometimes, you're trying very hard and, a kid won't talk to you or something like that. And like your previous question, do you sometimes just feel like, I don't know what to do? And that's when you have to maybe give it over to somebody else.
Amazing. Thank you for all the insight today. Again, if you have a question, whether it's a question about your child or school or even career related, please reach out, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Allan, as always, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I mean, this is kind of the stuff that you can't find anywhere. Even if you Google it, you might be lucky to find a blog somewhere. So I appreciate that. Thank you again.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Okay.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. Childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.